The art community is vast, with artists of all backgrounds and journeys inhabiting it. A tight-knit community where all artists should feel comfortable sharing their work. However, a recent debate on social media has posed the question: is there room for misrepresentation of Black people in art? Or is it justifiable by stylistic choice? Today, we are with two incredible artists, all with their own impressive stories to tell within the art industry. Do you want to start by introducing yourselves to our viewers?
Hello, my name is Jahmeelah, I'm 24 and I'm a digital artist based in South London. A lot of my work is about womanhood and spirituality, that finding of your feet kind of feeling. I do spoken word as well. I feel like poetry informs a lot of my work because it's based on narrative and how that narrative transforms into an image from text. But yeah, that's me.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Michael, Roy Arts. I'm a digital illustrator, also a storyboard artist. My work is more inspired by Afrofuturism and the representation of Black people in creativity.
Yes, we are surrounded by talent today. My name is Demi Lee Walker, and today we will be discussing a debate that has been online about the misinterpretation of Black people in art. This was sparked by a recent Twitter feed that took social media by storm. And this is the particular tweet that got everyone's hairs on their back standing up. Stop acting like not drawing dark-skinned characters is other people's fault for rightly being upset about whitewashing. If someone calls you out, learn from your mistakes instead of trying to defend your honor, to say how not racist you are, as if you did something wrong. There's also another tweet, it says, you can draw Black characters accurately without being racist and it still matching your color palette. If you think pastel colors can't work with dark skin, then that's a you problem. What do you think of that?
Listen, accurate. I think it's 100% accurate. You can draw Black people, Black skin, accurately without being racist. We've seen it in many things. We've seen it in so many cartoons. But obviously, when you're young, you don't really see those things. You don't really see the racism in it. You know, maybe literally making the dark character Black. And it's like, there's no transition, there's no contrast to the character. It's just Black with red lips. And it's like,
It's always the red lips.
Do you know what I mean?
Well, they're massive, and it's just like, okay, yeah.
and the Black character has to be the goofy one as well.
Yeah.
And it's like, put us in better roles, man.
Yeah, and also there's been tutorials online on literally how, a step-by-step guide on how to draw Black skin tones correctly. And one thing that I never realised was I did realise, but it never occurred to me.
Yeah.
The different colours on hands, Black people's hands, we have two different shades and they draw them the same colour.
Like, we don't have no contrast in our skin. Well, melanin is many colours put together. Like,
do you know what I mean?
Do you know what? I feel like this conversation has been going on for so long, and I'm happy that it's coming up now. I'm happy that it's at a stage where people are actually being more alert to stuff that are being represented, especially Black people, and how we're being represented in so many things, not just TV and movies, but also animation, cartoons. Look at Disney and what they're doing with some of the Black characters and some of the countries they're representing. And a lot of young children are able to represent with certain characters with curly hair, seeing young little children in animation with curly hair and stuff. And it's like, we need more of that, but why do we have to be represented in such a misleading way?
Yeah, for sure. Now, we all know the art industry has a long way to go in terms of representation. How do you find the art industry to be non-inclusive? What attitudes or experiences have you come across?
I feel like, for me personally, I think during the whole kind of COVID period, there was kind of a shift from a lot of companies, I think just before and then going into it, where it was like they were making more of an effort to be more inclusive. And this goes with everything, like brands and stuff like that, outside of art. And I feel like it hasn't come out of that feeling of it kind of feeling like, a token, or feeling like, okay, well, they realize that they need somebody else, on the team that looks like this, or somebody else involved in a campaign that looks like this and stuff like that. And it's funny, because before this year, I was doing more digital illustration, kind of like yourself, and I would find that it was specific projects that I would get where it's like, okay, we want your opinion as a black artist and da-da-da-da-da. And now I'm moving into more of like a fine art space and rethinking where I want my work to be seen and how I want it to be taken in. It's interesting to now come across the same kind of issues but in a different way.
In a different
like,
way, yeah.
You know, curators that, you know, will have a show and you're the like resident black artist of the show, do you know what I mean? And they're like, okay, yeah, we find your work so interesting, but it's just like, can it not be interesting anyway?
Yeah,
do you know what I mean? And
yeah.
is there only my interest because of, you know, who
Your
I
skin
am and
colour.
my skin
Yeah,
colour, or
yeah.
is it genuinely about my work? But I feel like that comes from a lot of things. It's a lack of inclusion into who is curating these spaces as well, and what access they have in those spaces to be able to curate their own shows if they wanted to. Like, it's not easy. So yeah, there's a long way to go, I feel like. I'm not saying this is like every experience either. I know there's some people out there doing like really, really good work, and I think a lot of the youth, they're realizing how the industry is. So they make their own spaces, and that's all well and good. But in terms of, you know, when we want to get to the level that we see our white counterparts getting to, it's like, how do we break into that, you know, into that system?
Into that space, yeah.
So yeah, a long way to go, but yeah, we deserve the nice things too.
A full cake, not just a slice of it.
Yeah. I don't want to bake my own cake.
Yeah, exactly.
I just want to bake my own
You just
cake.
want to be able to go into a room and be validated for your art and not for
as an
who
artist
you
and not
are.
as a black artist. That's another thing, is being presented just to represent one thing. Because everyone always says like art has no soul, like it's literally the artist that puts the soul into the art. So if you're then taking away that part of it, then how am I supposed to feel as a black person who isn't being represented perfectly, and as an artist who's only here to represent one thing? And it's like, where do I stand? Can I not just show who I am through multiple various things, but then you only want me to just draw black characters just because you don't want to come across as... And it's a little bit insulting because it's like, hey, I'm more talented than that. Let me try my hand at other things. But it's like, nope, you're the black artist. You have to draw this. And it's like, what if I don't want to?
Pigeonholed almost, yeah.
And it's like, but then as creatives, do we then start saying no to these type of jobs and not have opportunity for ourselves? Or then do we then accept and conform and then just get into these spaces because we just want to be there and have some sort of opportunity?
So since Black Lives Matter, there have been a range of conversations launched on social media and into the spotlight, such as the misrepresentation in art. How much do you think it's helped you as an artist?
I would say no, in the sense of that I don't think these conversations are even had or are being had in like our society, especially in like the British culture. I think nowadays, and I'm going to be brutally honest, nowadays I feel like every creative is kind of on a me-to-me standard, and it's like we're not really looking after community too much, and we're just more on, listen, I need to look after me as a creative, I need to get where I need to get, like if you get there, you get there kind of thing. But that's only because of the lack of opportunities, the lack of space and opportunities. Companies aren't really hiring multiple black people at once, they're just probably doing 1, 2. So most people are just like, listen, if I don't get there, he's going to get there before me. And it's like, that shouldn't be the case though.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
So it becomes like because there's so many limited jobs for black creatives, you end up being pitted against each other.
Exactly.
And instead of creating that community, you actually end up doing the opposite, because
exactly,
you're just trying to survive.
Everyone's
and
in this race to kind of... But back to what you were saying about Black Lives Matter and like if it has changed a lot of things, I feel like one thing I've tried to start doing is almost removing myself from that, and not in a way where it's like I don't care, because obviously it's a big part of your life as a black person, knowing that other black people are having these experiences. However, I think that that kind of fixation on the black, do you know what I mean, and like what that means, can also sometimes be overwhelming, I find.
Yep.
Like, when I'm making work, I try and think about things that, you know, we have been through, and not always the negative things. Do you know what I mean? Like issues about family and like how that can be a struggle sometimes, and finding that support within your family, or, you know, experiences with faith. If you feel like, you know, you're straying away from that, like how to navigate that. and like real things that young black people are going through, and I feel like there's not a lot of people making work about that kind of stuff, as opposed to making black art, which in itself is like unpacking that, like, what is black art? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a strange box to be in that you haven't signed up for, in a way. Like, it's just the color of my skin that makes me a black artist.
I suppose what you're trying to say is like you're trying to humanize
Yeah.
black people
Black
in art
people,
as
yeah.
opposed to fixating on trauma and struggle and hardship.
Exactly, because it's like we see it a lot already. Like my painting Diamonds in the Rough that was one of the themes, like kind of making the experience or our understanding of our experience like gentler. Do you know what I mean? Like we know the stories already, we know how certain things go, but there's no need for it to always be so in your face. I don't know, I find myself like put off sometimes by art that's just like, and I'm like, okay, like we get it. Yeah.
So we all know with everything that's going on with all these social media tutorials and everything, that there's a lot of argument back saying artistic freedom gives you the license to create what you want, how you want. At what point does art turn offensive?
I think art turns offensive when you're misrepresenting a culture, when you're misrepresenting something that has been represented for ages. I think that's when it becomes offensive, because it's like black people know how we look. We know how we want to be represented. We know how we can be represented, but it's almost a sense of laziness that's been marked in like art, and it's like, listen, that's not art. You're just being rude now, because you know damn well that there's no black person who's out here dark like that with red lips.
Yeah.
Most of us don't even have
Natural.
red lips. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, and then most of the characters are either made to look so funny so that you actually don't take them seriously. They might even have a serious role in the animation or whatever, but because of how they look, you're just like, this guy's silly, man. And that's how literally people see you and realize, oh yeah, you're just like that guy on that, and you're just like, that's not it. That's when it becomes offensive. When you're now being represented as what other people are seeing,
It's like a caricature.
then it's like, that's not art, that's just racism. Do you know
It's
what
so
I mean?
strange.
Yeah.
I find it a lot with like anime and stuff like that. I watched some of it with like one of my best friends, and there'll be moments where we'll be like, oh, why did they make the black person do that? Like, and it's just like something that you both understand, but if you were sitting there with somebody else, maybe, they wouldn't see an issue
They won't
with
see it, no.
So as artists, do you feel like you have to call it out? Do you call it out? Because this is where it gets into the nitty-gritty.
Yeah.
It is, yeah. I think I've had other experiences, maybe not in art, where I've been like, okay, that was a bit strange, or like maybe there's a different way that could have been done. But I've yet to encounter it myself. Like I would see him work and I'm like, okay, that's a bit strange, why did you do that? And I don't know, maybe that's because, you know, the breadth of work or the artists that I follow and I engage with, it's not that, if that makes sense. I feel like maybe I just naturally haven't put myself
enough for you to have to call it out.
In the space to see that.
I think it's a tough one to call out when it comes to art, if that makes sense. Because one, you have to also be considerate of the art piece itself.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, cool, is this actually offensive or is this just how I'm seeing it? And then on top of that, you then have to know the artist on its own and just be like, okay, cool, I know this artist's history. This artist isn't representing this in that way. This is just how the artist has just created this piece. It's supposed to actually read a message. It's almost like calling everything that you see out, and it's like that can get a bit overwhelming, one, and two, it can also become very, very toxic like environment, because then people become scared to be able to just represent themselves. I feel like when it comes to representing culture that isn't of your own, then yeah, you kind of almost have to not call it out, but just, I think it's wise to just speak to the artists themselves and just be like, hey, is this how you meant this? Instead of calling them out publicly, I think then we should just be like, what happened to sending emails? What happened to just, do you know what I mean? Like DMing people on a down low and just, I feel like nowadays a lot of people just want to put everything in the limelight of social media and just be like, yeah, this person's a bad person.
Embarrassing people.
Do you know what I mean?
It's a strange...
And it's like
It's a
that
fine
person
line,
doesn't,
isn't it, between...
They don't even mean it like that. But it's just like, oh my God, you drew this like this, then yeah, I'm blasting your social media. You're cancelled, cancel culture.
I think that's what you meant by, like, if there was a firm community, then maybe these conversations could be had in that way. But because you don't necessarily feel part of that community, it's hard to be an outsider interjecting with that.
Yeah. Most times you just see it and you're just like, listen, it's not my business.
Well, guys, we are out of time. Thank you so much for this thought-provoking conversation. I feel like we've just opened a can of worms that has so much more to dig into. So thank you for your insight, your knowledge, and your energy.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And hopefully we can move towards a community, an art industry, and a society where people are heard, validated, seen, and represented correctly. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're gonna clap?
We're gonna clap.